Welcome to the Archaeologist server tutorial. The Archaeologist is an important piece of the Sarcophagus network. They are a third-party service provider of the second layer of encryption. They are disinterested and are incentivized and rewarded with Sarco tokens based on parameters that they set. Now we can get started. Once you are on sarcophagus.io, select the GitHub image on the top right. Then click the Archaeologist service link. This will bring you to the directions for setting up the Archaeologist server. Scroll down to the README to see the overview of the service and prerequisites for setting up the server. There are a few prerequisites needed before you get started. You first need to have an Arweave wallet with some Arweave. The Arweave protocol allows data to be posted on the web permanently. Having some Arweave tokens in your wallet allows you to accept jobs and post a sarcophagus to the Arweave network. Next, you need to have Sarco tokens to accept the job. The Sarco tokens are used to post the bond for the sarcophagus. You also need to have Ethereum on the same wallet that has those Sarco tokens. This will cover gas fees when it comes to interactions with contracts, such as unwrapping a sarcophagus. Fourth, you will also need a domain. Before we get started, I just want to say that I'm running the service on Ubuntu Linux. I am using a VPS for my setup. This is not the only way to complete this. From the information out there, the team is looking to be able to run the services on a Raspberry Pi. Also, while we go through this, I just want to state that I currently have the dependencies such as Git or Go on my computer. You may need to install those if you've never used them before. To begin the quick start build, we need to copy a few lines to the terminal. The first line is to clone the Git repo. Type git clone and the GitHub. Once that is done cloning, we can see the directory by typing in ls. We notice that the Archaeologist service is here now. Then we're going to change directories to the Archaeologist service. You can use cd Archaeologist service. Once there, we will create a copy of the configuration file based off an example template. You can use the command cp config.example.yml space config.yml. Again, we can type ls and see that the configuration file is here as well as other files. We will come back to the final step later. Now that we are done with the setup, we can take a look at the configuration notes. There are a few things that need to be completed for the configuration file, as well as making sure we have everything properly installed and set up. The configuration example file can be used to guide us through the process. All changes need to be done in the config.yml file, because that is the configuration for the server. During the setup, I will show you additional steps like where to get the WebSocket and how to point your domain's DNS at the IP address of the server. Finally, I will be going through the process of creating an Nginx reverse proxy. Let's take a look at the example configuration file. We're going to cd into the Archaeologist service. Then we're going to open up the example file with Nano. When we enter the file, we see there are comments to help guide you through each step. First, we have the ETH node. This needs to be running a WebSocket to the Ethereum network. I'm going to show you how to set up an easy and free one called Infura, which I will show you how to do now. We're going to go to infura.io, and you'll need to sign up if you do not have an account. This can be done either by clicking sign up on the top right or get started in the middle. Once you're done and signed in, you're going to click Ethereum on the left side, and on the next page, you're going to create a project and give the project a name. Once you're done with that and it is created, you will see a display of the mainnet, HTTPS, and WebSocket. Depending on what you want to use, you can click the drop down and change it. I'm going to be using the Rinkeby network, so now I have the Rinkeby HTTPS endpoint or the WebSocket endpoint. We will be using the WSS link for the ETH node. Now we can continue. Next, we have the ETH private key. This is the private key of the wallet that will pay the gas fees on the transactions. Then we have the mnemonic, and this will be used to generate the public and private key pairs for the outer layer of encryption. You can use the website iancoleman.io/bip39 to generate a mnemonic and plug it in here. I went to the website and upon generation, switched the coin to Ethereum and received a 15-word mnemonic. Next, we have the Arweave key file. This is the file path to your Arweave key file on your server. If you have an Arweave key file on your computer and not on your server, you're going to want to transfer the file securely. I use Secure Copy to complete this file move. You're going to type scp, the name of the file, the user of the device, the @ symbol, the IP address, colon, and the location you want to move it. In this example, I use the tilde or the root file path. Once you do that, you're going to have to enter a password and it will move the file securely. Now we can continue with reviewing the config example file. After that, we have the Arweave node. The current node here is set to public. You don't need to touch this at all. After that, we have the Arweave fee multiplier, which you can adjust to estimate Winston fees for Arweave. The next two variables are the Sarco contract address and the Sarco token address. Since I'm on RinkB, I'm not going to change these, but you would change these to the mainnet addresses if you wanted to be there. After this is the endpoint. This is the domain that I mentioned was needed earlier. You would put that domain here, but you also need to make sure your domain's DNS is pointing to the IP address as well. I'm going to give you an example now. Because you may have a different setup, I will not go through the process, but give you an example of how to set up your server and domain. The top portion was completed through my server. I used my IP address on my server and pointed to my domain as the reverse DNS. Then I went to my domain and added two A records, a wildcard or star under the host and an @ under the host. Now my server and domain are linked. Next, we have the file port. The file port is the port you decide to open and receive the Sarcophagus asset file. I will mention this again later. Next, we have the fee per byte. This is the amount of Sarco you'll get per byte. I plan to lower this amount. Then we have the minimum bounty, which is what you plan to receive for completing our Sarcophagus job successfully. Then we have the minimum digging fee. This is what you'll be paid for rewrapping a sarcophagus. Next, we have the max resurrection time. This is a time interval you're willing to hold onto the sarcophagus before it needs to be attested to. For example, if I say I will have it for 1 year, then a file cannot be held for more than that time period. This is expressed in Unix time, and if you use unixtimestamp.com, you can determine how long you wish to have the max resurrection time to be. Finally, we have add to freebond and remove from freebond. These two variables will be reset every time the service is started. The archaeologist needs to post a bond on the creation of each sarcophagus. Add will add to the available Sarco tokens and allow you to take on more jobs due to the fact that more bond can be posted. You will want to use remove if you believe you have too many Sarco tokens that are sitting stagnant. I exited the config.example.yml file, and now we can edit the config file by using Nano. I already updated all the information needed, and you can see all that information here. I used the WebSocket from infura.io for the ETH node. The ETH private key is from your wallet that will cover the gas. I used int::bip39 to generate a mnemonic under the coin of Ethereum. The Arweave key file is simply the file path on your server to the Arweave key file. I did not touch the public node. I updated the Arweave multiplier slightly. I did not touch the contract addresses as they were already on RinkB. I added my endpoint. I did not change the file port from 8080. This will matter for our SSL setup coming up. The rest of the information is preference. I lowered the fee per byte. I decided what the min bounty and min digging fees would be. I went to unixtimestamp.com to choose a resurrection time in the future. I put 30 Sarco for add free to bond, and I had 0 to remove from the free to bond. So this is the config file. Most settings are a preference outside of a few items. Once you are done, you can save the file by pressing Ctrl+X, Y for yes, and enter. Now that we've finished the configuration section, we are going to create a reverse proxy server using Nginx in the example. We will need to open port 443, install Nginx, use Certbot to create an SSL, and create a reverse proxy file. We're going to open up port 443 on our device as the first step in our Nginx reverse proxy setup. Type in UFW allow 443, and we see it says rules added. Now that we have the ports open, let's click the link for install Nginx. Then we're going to scroll down to the install notes that pertain to our operating system. Once there, we're going to type in the commands. First we type sudo apt-get update. That's going to run, and then we will type sudo apt-get install Nginx. Now, let's use Certbot to install an SSL. Go back to the Sarcophagus docs and click the user Certbot to install SSL hyperlink. At the top, enter the website type you are running. In this case, I'm going to use Nginx on Ubuntu 20.04. Since I'm already in SSH, I'm going to skip step 1. Click the snapd link and that will bring you to a list of operating systems. Select the one that your server is going to be running. I'm using Ubuntu, so I'll click that. If you scroll down, there are commands to type in. The first one is sudo apt update, and once that is done, we can type the next command, which is sudo apt install snapd. This will take a little bit to install, and when you're done, it is recommended that you either log out or restart the system to ensure it is working properly, which I will do now. Okay, so after restarting, we can go back to the Certbot step guide and continue the process. We need to make sure we have the most up-to-date version of snapd. Use the command sudo snap install core sudo snap refresh core. Once we are up to date, we need to make sure we have no Certbot OS packages. This command is based off your OS, and it is listed in the step guide. I use the command sudo apt-get remove certbot. I had no Certbot packages installed, so the command was only a double check. Now we will install Certbot with the command sudo snap install -- classic certbot. This will start the installation, and it may take a little bit to complete. After that is done, we will add the next line to ensure Certbot can be run properly. Use sudo ln -s and the file path snap-bin certbot and the file path user bin certbot. Once that is done, we can create a certificate. There are two options for this. You can have a certificate created and installed automatically, or if you want to be on the conservative side, you can just have the certificate created. I'm going to auto install it, so I type in sudo certbot -- nginx. This will prompt you for personal information. I will be back after I complete this. As you can see from the setup, I've included my domain, and the certificate and keys were automatically generated. The next thing we want to check is that the certificate are set for automatic renewal. You'll need to type in the following command: sudo certbot renew -- run. The command will simulate a renewal process, and you should receive a congratulations on the successful test. Now we have one more thing to do. Let's check out our website. We can confirm this works by seeing the lock to the left of the website URL. Since I'm using a VPS, I will also be getting an SSL from my server as well. You can use the command certbot -d and the name of the server. In this case, server1.sarchaeologist.com. A new certificate and key will be generated. Now that the SSL is set, we just have to set up the reverse proxy configuration. Nano into the specific file name from the docs as we see here, and this will also create the document. As you can see, I have copied in the exact file from the docs and adjusted a few things. I replaced the server name the portion of the certificate that should be the domain name, and the portion of the certificate key that should be the domain name. Finally, we should scroll down to look at the port on the proxy pass section. This should match the file port from earlier on the config file. Let's save and exit that by pressing Ctrl X, Y to save, and Enter to confirm. Now we have to create a symbolic link by copying the next command from the docs. Once we're done with that, we need to restart Nginx with sudo service nginx restart. It is time to build, run, and test our server. To build our server, we need to move into the Archaeologist service directory with cd. Once there, type in the command go build. This will begin the building of the Archaeologist service that will run. The process will take a little bit to complete. If we type in ls, we will now see the Sarcophagus Archaeologist service. This was actually running the Archaeologist. It is recommended that you run the Archaeologist in the background, so we're going to now create a system service to allow that to happen. Let's copy the command to create the art service. Once we are in the file to edit, copy the lines from the GitHub docs. Now we need to adjust 4 parameters. Condition path exists, user, working directory, and exec start. You can now see that I've updated the 4 parameters. Path exist has been updated to be the path to the Archaeologist service. Next is user. Since I am running this as a root user, the user is root. Then we have working directory. This is the same as path exist, which is the path to the Archaeologist service. Finally, we have exec start. This is the path to the script running the service. That would be the same as a working directory, except we add airfoil, sarcophagus, archaeologist, service at the end. Once that file is saved, we will run the following commands. The first command is sudo systemctl daemon reload. This will reload the system services to capture the service we just added. The second command is sudo service art service start. This will start your Archaeologist. The next command I'm going to run is sudo journal ctl-f-u art service. This will allow you to view the service logs in real time. You can now see that the server is live. The server's displaying will be updated from the config file. There is the endpoint, the arch address, the fee per byte, the min bounty, min digging fee, max resurrection time, the transaction being mined, the gas used. Then there can be a little bit of time in waiting for the transaction to be mined. There is the free bond, the current cursed bond, your ETH balance, the Sarco token balance, the Arweave balance, your Arweave address, the time in which the Archaeologist will be rebuilt, and finally listening to events, or rather waiting to be cursed. The command sudo journal ctl-f-u art service can be used at any time to see the live logs. After we see our logs are running successfully, we want to be sure we can ping the endpoint with the command curl the server endpoint /ping. If this says anything other than true, such as a 404 error, then there's something wrong with your Nginx server setup, and that would need to be reviewed. If the command returns true, you can go to the sarcophagus.io webpage to see your Archaeologist. If there is an error, we will want to review it. Type in the command sudo service art service stop. This will stop the art service. Then type in nano/var/log nginx/error.log. This will bring you to the Nginx error log and display any errors. In this case, the Nginx server has two conflicting server names, which is causing a server issue. You can exit the log and type in cd/etc/nginx/sites available. If you type in ls here, you will see there is a default file. Use the command nano default. We are now in the default Nginx file. When we set up Certbot automatically, it will interact with the default file here. If there's any excess code, we will need to remove it to allow only one endpoint request. Right below the virtual hosting section, you will see server setup for the 443 ports along with the SSLs. We don't need any of that because we already set up a reverse proxy. So what you'll want to do is delete anything below the virtual hosting. This will leave only the server port AD request above, and that's it. Once you are done, save and exit. Now type in service nginx restart to restart the Nginx server. Finally, we can run our service again with sudo service arch service start. Your Arch server should now be running. You can always double check this by running the curl command mentioned previously. The only thing left to do now is see the Archaeologist server on the sarcophagus.io page. Here we are on the embalmer page, and we can see the service is finally here by looking at the metrics and seeing my Arch address and the fee parameters I set. One comment I have is that you need to make sure your free bond and Arweave can cover a sarcophagus job. If the free bond on the Archaeologist is less than the fees that you are requiring, the Archaeologist will not be able to accept the job. Finally, I want to say thank you to all the Sarcophagus members that made themselves available to answer my questions. We know I had a lot of them, but it got us here, so thank you very much.